The morning was perfect for planting. Clear blue skies, just enough breeze to keep cool. I was up before sunrise, the same way my grandfather taught me 30 years ago. My family had worked on this land for generations, and I wasn't about to break tradition. When my phone buzzed for the 5th time, I ignored it. Nothing was more important than getting the seeds in the ground. At lunch, I finally checked my messages and almost choked on my sandwich. 10 missed calls from neighbors, 3 voicemails from my cousin, and an email from the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association with the subject line, "Violation Notice." I opened it, my stomach tightening as I read. They were claiming my tractor noise violated their peaceful enjoyment bylaw, that my chicken coops created offensive odors affecting their property values. I laughed out loud. Oak Ridge Estates had only been there for 8 months. My farm had been here since 1892. The letter ended with a demand: cease all farming operations within 500 feet of their property line within 48 hours or face a $200 daily fine. I crumpled the paper and tossed it aside. They had no authority over my land. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a car door slamming. A woman in a crisp white pantsuit was marching across my front yard, clipboard in hand, trailed by 2 men in polo shirts with the Oak Ridge Estates logo. "Mr. Jackson," she called as I stepped onto my porch. "I'm Karen Wilson, president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. We need to discuss your continued violations." I crossed my arms. "There's nothing to discuss. Your HOA has no jurisdiction over my property." Karen's plastic smile didn't falter. "Actually, according to the county zoning board, your agricultural exemption expired last year. Your property is now subject to our community standards as outlined in Municipal Code Section 42.3. That caught me off guard. My property tax bills certainly hadn't changed. "My family has farmed this land for over 100 years, I said. "No HOA can suddenly claim authority over it." Karen's smile turned cold. "Times change. We have standards now. Our residents paid premium prices for homes with guaranteed property values." She handed me another notice. "Cease and desist." As they left, my cousin Tom called. He lived in Oak Ridge Estates and served on the town council. "They've been planning this for months," he warned. "Karen's been having private meetings with developers and changing meeting minutes after they're approved." That night, I dug through county records. My agricultural exemption was still valid for another 5 years. Karen had lied. For the next week, I continued working my fields, ignoring the increasingly threatening letters. Then came the noise complaints to the sheriff. Sheriff Davis, an old high school friend, sighed as he leaned against his cruiser. "Look, Mike, I know this is ridiculous, but they're filing complaints every single day. They've even started a petition claiming your farm is a public nuisance. Dave, my family has been feeding this county longer than that development has had paved roads. What's really going on here?" The sheriff hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I shouldn't tell you this, but there was a closed-door meeting last week. County commissioners, some developers from the city, and the HOA board. They're pushing hard for some big project. That afternoon, I spotted strangers in suits walking my eastern fields, taking pictures and measurements. I jumped in my truck and drove straight toward them. "Can I help you, gentlemen? You're trespassing on private property." A tall man in an expensive suit extended his hand. "James Miller, Westview Development Corporation. Just surveying the land for preliminary planning." "Planning for what exactly?" "This is my farm." Miller looked confused. He glanced at his tablet. "According to our paperwork, Westview purchased 1,700 acres from Oak Ridge Estates 3 weeks ago. Construction begins next month for the new Oak Ridge Common Shopping Center and luxury condos." My heart nearly stopped. "That's impossible. I never sold my land to anyone." Miller showed me the digital documents. Survey maps of my eastern fields, bearing official county stamps and signatures. The owner listed is Oak Ridge Estates Community Trust. I stormed into the county recorder's office the next morning. The clerk, a young man in glasses, barely looked up when I approached. "I need to see all property transactions involving Oak Ridge Estates in the last year." He adjusted his glasses. "That information requires a formal records request, which takes." I slammed a copy of my deed onto the counter. "Someone forged my signature and sold my land. This isn't a request." That got his attention. He started typing, his brow furrowing. "Your name is still on the original deed, but there's a secondary transfer pending approval by the county board. If that goes through, it will override the original title." "Who approved it?" He hesitated. "The HOA president, Karen Wilson." Rage bubbled up inside me. "That's fraud." "It's complicated," he admitted. "They likely used a loophole, an old eminent domain clause that lets HOAs claim property for community improvements. But they need a final approval." "When's the hearing?" 3 days from now. I nodded. Then I guess I'll see them in court. 3 days passed in a blur of research, phone calls, and late-night meetings with my attorney, Sam Harper. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, an old friend who specialized in property law. If anyone could take on Karen Wilson and the HOA, it was him. The morning of the county board hearing, the courthouse was packed. Karen sat at the front, flanked by her legal team, their confidence oozing from their tailored suits. When the hearing started, Karen stood first, speaking with her usual smirk. The Oak Ridge Estates Community Trust has acted within its legal rights to reclaim and used farmland for the benefit of the greater community. Mr. Jackson's property, while historically significant, no longer qualifies for agricultural protections under new zoning laws. We are fully within our rights to proceed with development. Sam stood next, adjusting his tie before speaking. Your Honor, my client's land was never reclaimed, it was stolen. We have evidence that the HOA falsified meeting minutes and misrepresented zoning reports. Furthermore, the agricultural exemption from Mr. Jackson's property is still valid, meaning this land grab is completely illegal. The judge frowned. Do you have supporting documents? I handed over the records. Sam pointed to key discrepancies, changes made to zoning maps, backdated approvals, and missing public notices. The judge's frown deepened. These irregularities are concerning. This court will require a full review before any sale is finalized. Karen's smug expression faltered. That night, I met with Ray, Millie, and some of the local farmers at Millie's diner. We needed more than just legal action. We needed the town on our side. We have to make noise, Millie said, slapping a newspaper onto the table. The headline read, Town Divided, HOA Development Project Faces Opposition. We organize a rally, Ray added. Let the media see that people are against this. We can't let them control the narrative. By the next afternoon, signs were going up. Social media exploded with posts defending the farm. Local businesses joined in, putting up banners, Save Jackson's Farm. The HOA pushed back with press statements, but something had changed. More people were speaking out. Karen's grip on the town was slipping. A week later, the county board reconvened. This time, the room was overflowing, not just with reporters, but with farmers, local business owners, and families who wanted to preserve the land. Sam presented our final piece of evidence, an email leak exposing Karen's direct involvement in forging property documents. The board members whispered among themselves as the truth unraveled in front of them. When the judge called for a ruling, the decision was swift. All development plans on Jackson's property are permanently voided. Additionally, an official investigation into the HOA's fraudulent activity will begin immediately. Karen stood frozen, her perfect mask cracking. The developers in the back of the room quietly slipped out. I exhaled, a weight lifting off my chest. We had won. A month later, the Oak Ridge Estates HOA was under legal scrutiny, and Karen Wilson resigned in disgrace. I stood in my field, looking at the untouched soil, the land that would remain in my family for generations to come. So what's next? Ray asked. I smiled. We rebuild, and we make sure no one ever tries this again. As the sun set over my land, I knew one thing for sure. This fight had changed everything, and I was ready for whatever came next.